Hey everybody, Michael here and Corey here, working on Kimco's beautiful Larwin Square property, and we are going to show you how to install a Synapse wireless node. The first step in this process is going to be to remove the 7-pin receptacle, and to do that Michael will open the fixture and disconnect all the wiring coming from the 7-pin receptacle to the existing loads. The reason for removing the 7-pin receptacle on the VLX Visionaire fixtures is so a spacer can be installed to create clearance for the new Synapse nodes. Without the spacer, the Synapse nodes do not have full clearance and they will not seat fully into place when twisted into the socket. So the first step again is to identify all your wires coming from your 7-pin receptacle. Some of these wires are going to be going to your Wagyu connectors inside the fixtures that were factory installed. And some of the wires will actually not be in use depending on the fixture application you're working on. On this fixture, we are going to be adding a sensor. So the existing wires were not in use as there was not a sensor installed previously. This is a really simple process. Just make sure you keep track of all your wires and make sure you don't pinch anything when putting everything back into place. And of course, to let everybody know, we have power turned off and we are locked out and tagged out at the house panel.
It's isolated.
So Michael has all the 7-pin receptacle wires isolated. Now we will go to the top of the fixture and show you how the spacer is installed. So here's the 7-pin receptacle. The 7-pin receptacle is installed with 2 screws on either side of the receptacle. To remove it, you just extract the screws. And it's simple as that. Now that we have the 7-pin receptacle removed, we will install the spacer. The spacer is a metal ring provided with a rubber gasket to provide a weather-tight seal. Just feed the wires through the spacer and the gasket. And once you have that done, resupply the wires through the fixture and be sure you do not pinch any of the wires when reinstalling the 7-pin receptacle. Once the receptacle's in place, reinstall the hardware to properly secure the receptacle. And when tightening the receptacle, be sure not to over tighten. You just want this to be a nice snug fit to give a nice weather tight seal. Okay, there is the 7-pin receptacle installed with the spacer. Now we'll go back down and rewire the receptacle to the fixture. Okay, now that we have the 7-pin receptacle reinstalled, we are going to rewire the fixture. As a quick reference, I'm going to show you the wiring schematic. This will be provided by On-Site Lighting and shows you the schematic on exactly how everything will be wired. I'm not going to go into this in much detail because we're going to give you a live demonstration, but please reference this. It's a great tool for your technicians and it explains how everything will be wired correctly. Okay, the first step is we're going to install the motion sensor. Each fixture with the Synapse system will have a FS305 watt stopper motion sensor. They simply install through the driver case, but before you do that, you want to make sure you adjust the dials on the sensor. You want to adjust the dials to the maximum setting, or I apologize, to the minimum setting. So when you adjust these dials, you'll see there's oscillators on there. You simply turn those counterclockwise until you feel resistance. Go ahead and show them, Mike, how you can adjust those. So you simply dial each way, and when you do it counterclockwise, when you feel resistance, let off it, and that's at the minimum setting. This allows the sensors to be at the minimum setting so Gamut could set thresholds for motion and time delays. To install the sensor, it's very simple. There's a lock ring on the front of the sensor, goes through the existing plate on the fixture, and the lock ring secures it in place. This just needs to be hand tightened, and then once that's installed, you can install the sensor lens. Okay, now that we have the sensor installed, now we're going to wire the sensor. So again, we're going to identify all the wires off the 7-pin receptacle based off the schematic and wire it correctly as shown on the schematic. So currently Mike is touching the black wire, which is going to be your common off the sensor. The common off the sensor, the black wire, goes to your gray Wagyu connector, which is the negative side dim lead off your LED drivers. You want to make sure that these have nice secure connections. The Wagyu connector sometimes can give you a false sense of good connections, and that's a lot of the issues you'll find in commissioning is loose connections. The next wire is going to be your red wire, which is going to be your 24-volt wire. The red wire is going to connect to the brown wire off of the 7-pin receptacle. This is the only wire that will connect to your brown wire off the 7-pin receptacle. Again, just make sure you have a nice connection and that everything is secured. The next connection will be your blue wire, which is your control wire. The blue wire connects to your orange wire off your 7-pin receptacle, and this is the only wire that will connect to your orange wire off the 7-pin receptacle. And again, sometimes those sensor wires, they're very small and can make a bad connection really easy. So it's just good practice to make sure that you have a nice, tight, secure connection. And again, connection issues are one of the more common items that you'll run into during commissioning. So just really good due diligence before you finish up the wiring of the fixtures to double check all your connections. Okay. Now that we have that connected, we're going to connect all the remaining 7-pin receptacle wires. We will start with the violet, which is your positive dimming off the 7-pin receptacle. That will go to your positive dimming violet wires off your LED drivers and connect to the Wagyu connector. The next wire is going to be your gray for your negative dimming control off your drivers, and that'll connect to the gray wires, again the negative dim off your drivers, to the gray wire off the 7-pin receptacle. The next connection is going to be your main common neutral. That's going to connect to your main Wagyu connector for your common coming into the fixture. The next connection is going to be your red wire, the load wire off your 7-pin receptacle, and that's going to connect to your LED driver black leads. So this red wire connects to the power source for your LED drivers, the black leads coming off your LED drivers. And the final connection will be our main power source to the 7-pin receptacle, and it comes off the 7-pin receptacle to your surge protector within the fixture. That's going to connect to the Wagyu connector with the black wire to your surge protector, and also has the main power coming into your pole, the primary power source. And before you finalize everything, confirm all connections are secured. And that no wires are going to be pinched. Typically at this time, you need to secure some wires with some zip ties to make sure that everything is nice and neatly contained within the fixture, as a lot of the original zip ties were removed during the removal of the 7-pin receptacle. It's an easy process, just adding a few zip ties to make sure that everything is nice and clean inside the fixture. Again, as you're doing this, you double check all connections, make sure everything's nice and tight. Tuck the wires back neatly into the fixture. And here's a good example of a wire that can come loose when you're putting the fixture back together. So again, it's just a good example of a reference, to always make sure you double check your connections. Simply pushing the wires back in the fixture is an easy way to have a wire come loose, especially in the Wagyu connectors. They're just, kind of notorious for having issues like that. So, just a quick overview right before you close the fixture is something that saves a lot of time during these installations. And then once you have everything nice and secured and tucked back into place, final step will be to attach the security line, the safety chain to the driver compartment door. And again, paying attention to make sure that you don't pinch any wires when you're closing the driver compartment door. And secure the driver door in place. And that concludes the wiring of the 7-pin receptacle. So the next installation will be of the node. So the node will come in packaging. We've already documented how to track the MAC address worksheet numbers. The MAC address will be on the node. If it's ever anything that needs to be referenced, you can reference it directly off the node itself. You seat the node in place in the 7-pin receptacle and twist it into place. Very, very important to make sure you twist this fully into place. A lot of the commissioning issues you'll run into are nodes not twist fully into the 7-pin receptacle and all 7 pins not making contact. This minor little item to be overlooked, to not fully twist that into place, can cause a lot of troubleshooting issues on the commissioning end. So just a good point to review with the technicians to make sure they understand the importance of making sure those are fully seated into place. And that's how you install a Synapse wireless control. This is Michael and I am Corey, again at Larwin Square, and we are signing out. Thank you.